Richard Angell. Angel.
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 Yes. 2 L's. I've heard it said that we're a democracy. I'd like to point out that this country was founded as a constitutional republic. Democracy is mob rule. A constitutional republic means, in part, that nobody is above the Constitution, including the president. And I think that's why we're all here. Number 2, I want to point out about partisanship. I'm an independent, and I voted as a Republican in the just for the primary, and I know I'm not alone. This is not a partisan issue. This is an American. This is about the Constitution and the American people versus the president. Also, it was mentioned before that there were a lot fewer voters way back when. It's also true that the people only voted for representatives, not for senators or the president directly. And finally, I wanted to address the question about the paragraph on the first page. There was a question about, well, what part of the Constitution is being violated when people are being tortured or cruelly or inhumanely treated, and the answer to that question is found in the Fifth Amendment, which says in part, no person shall be compelled to be a witness against himself. Of course, the way you compel a person to be a witness against himself is by subjecting him to torture. And then, of course, you have the Eighth Amendment, which says in part that no person, excessive bail shall not be required and excessive fines shall not be imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. So we don't need to look to the UN or anybody outside. All we have to do is open our own Constitution, and there it is. And by authorizing waterboarding, the president is clearly in violation of that. And if there's any question about that, about waterboarding being torture, all you got to do is subject somebody to it until they admit that it is.
A quick question. Okay. Now, what happens if the U.S. does this, but it's not on U.S. soil, and that person is not subject to the Constitution of the United States and U.S. laws?
Well, it says no person shall be compelled to be a witness against himself. It doesn't say except when done outside of. I mean, actually, if you think about it, the what we call the federal government is supposed to be acting only within that 10 square miles in Washington, D.C. So does that mean just because we are out here, does that mean we're not subject to it? Of course not. It applies when it's the action of the United States government. It's not a question of what part of the world it's being done to. The purpose of the Constitution is to limit the actions of the government, period.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, maybe you can clarify this, because I don't know if the person speaking can. But is it not a fact that waterboarding is considered possibly torture under maybe the government of the United States, but not in the form of the military, like you just said? In a foreign country, if it was to protect your troops or whatever, that it would be used because it's in the U.S. Army Manual?
Part of the thing that goes around is that under the Geneva Convention, it could be construed as torture. And because we are signee to the Geneva Convention, any treaty is a status of law under the U.S. Constitution. So that's where you circumvent in saying is, if I'm violating the Geneva Convention, I'm violating U.S. law because I'm tortured. And so when the president says, well, Donald Rumsfeld said, the Geneva Convention doesn't apply in Afghanistan, they were doing an opt-out.
But isn't that true what he said? Because in Afghanistan, they're combatants, it's not an army. And that's why we have Guantanamo and all this other stuff that people are concerned about, really don't understand.
Well, it goes back to what the young lady
The
just...
Geneva Convention does not apply. And that's why they're looking to have House Resolution 111 for POWs, MIAs,
Well,
to change the name.
But under the land, it's called the law of land warfare, and under the Geneva Convention, you don't have to wear uniforms like we do, you have to have a recognizable command structure in there. So if the Taliban, well, they don't wear uniforms, but he's the boss, bing, 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 it's a recognizable command structure, then you could argue that they would fall under the Geneva Convention in there. So there's a lot of discussion that never
There's no
was
fact.
taking place.
Am I
Thank-
done?
Yep, you're done.